Hello again to all you ghouls. Tonight we will review a story of fools. A tale of revenge from someone unkind. A tale of a woman caught in a bind. Sit back and enjoy this gruesome review. And do remember, the proposition may just find its way to you. The Proposition by Ebenezer Crowley. Posted on April 13th, 2016. Please enjoy the original story before listening to this review. Link to the story and author are in the description, as well as the rules for how our scoring system works. The Proposition, to put it simply, is a story about the dangers of repressing and hiding your true feelings. The story is a tale as old as time, unfortunately, about a wife, Kathy Miller, who finds the love she once had for her husband to be fading. Waking up each and every morning finding that her resentment has grown just a little bit more with each passing day. The story makes it very clear to us in this opening section just what Kathy thinks of her husband, Marty. Not even 4 paragraphs in, and Kathy begins to complain relentlessly about her husband, about how dull he is, about how predictable he is, and Crowley, the author, does a great job of establishing this and really driving home just how deep her hatred for her husband has actually grown. We see this through multiple scenes where Kathy just complains non-stop about her husband. Things as tiny as his haircut or his smile, and even to the point where she is frustrated that he won't argue with her. Now, we'll talk more about Kathy herself when we get to the character portion of the story, but the establishment of her growing rage is very important for understanding the theme of the overall story. And the Proposition does a great job of building that up, showing us, not telling us, but showing us that her resentment for her husband has grown to such an insane degree that she would even consider murder. And not just murder. When the offer is brought to her, the offer to have Marty killed, Kathy is given the option on a scale of 1 to 5 how much suffering she wants Marty to endure during his death. And she opts for a 3. Now, it's not the worst pain she could have given. But considering that a 5 is like being skinned alive with a butter knife, I think it's easy to assume that a 3 would not be a comfortable death. She is so fed up with her husband, so enraged and disgusted by him, that she wants him to suffer upon death. And here I quote, "One final question, Mrs. Miller. His end. Should he suffer?" Mr. Sticks tapped a pen against a small piece of paper. "On a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being skinned alive with a butter knife, and 1 being sudden heart attack." Kathy paused to think, but Marty's face appeared in her mind, that smug smile. Let's go with a 3. She didn't want to be cruel, after all. 3 seemed like a reasonable number. At the end of the story, Kathy discovers a similar receipt to the one she received from Mr. Sticks, only this one owned by Marty, revealing to us that he agreed to the same proposition only weeks earlier, though he was not so kind in his judgment, delivering Kathy a death with a pain scale of 5. The implications here are that the feelings were mutual, that the suffering and hatred that Kathy felt were reciprocated by Marty. And although we never hear from Marty directly, never hear exactly how he feels about his wife, through the sheer fact of him choosing to deliver her a 5 in pain speaks just volumes to how he must be feeling about her. And that is where the message of this story comes into play. All of this, both agreements, could have been easily avoided had the two of them just sat down and discussed this like adults. If they had just discussed how they were feeling about their marriage, they could have split on equal terms, amicably divorcing and going on with their lives in a much more happy and alive manner. But they don't. Marty and Kathy are more than happy to let themselves suffer and fester in order to preserve their status quo, their precious status quo. And we see this through the premonition that Mr. Sticks gives to Kathy as well. Here I quote. Oh, here comes the good part. His grin made munching popcorn a little difficult, but he managed. On the screen, sitting on the bed, a haggard Kathy stared at her feet, her hands rubbing over her lap. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she began to sob. "You never leave." His voice actually sounded sympathetic. You still complained and talked about leaving, but year after year, no divorce, no leaving, no freedom. Now, I don't think that Kathy and Marty genuinely hated each other. I don't think that under any other circumstance that these two would have tried to kill each other. It's simply because of the purgatory that they trapped each other in that these feelings were planted and had the proper environment to grow to the lengths that they did. And I believe this is backed up in the actual text of the story. After Kathy agrees to Marty's death, she feels immense guilt that she gave him a 3 in suffering, and sets out to make the rest of his life as comfortable as possible. Now, we never see Marty's side of this, so we don't know if he also regretted giving Kathy such a painful death, but we can at least see that on Kathy's side, the hatred is not true. She does not hate Marty, she just hates having Marty as a husband. And that is where the true message lies, the dangers of burying your feelings and never admitting to how you truly feel. And although in real life there may not be a Mr. Sticks to do these foul deeds for people, I think deep down, we all have a bit of Mr. Sticks in us ourselves, and such festering, hateful emotions are exactly the kind of thing that brings him out. I feel justified in giving this section a 4 out of 5. My only gripe is that I feel like it ends a little too soon. I think the story would have really benefited from elaborating on Kathy and Marty during those few days where she was spoiling him before his death. It could have given Marty some much-needed character development, expanded on Kathy's character, and just overall given the story a little bit more room to breathe. That said, it is still overall an incredible story, with an incredible theme and message to tell, that I feel is certainly deserving of a near-perfect score, 4 out of 5. This story is heavily character-driven, entirely by the 3 main characters, Kathy, Marty, and Mr. Sticks. But we'll start off with Kathy, our main character. Kathy is the character that we see the story through. I hesitate to call her a protagonist, but she is our main character. Now, I know it's easy to want to hate Kathy. The beginning of the story does not paint her in the best of light, but she comes off as an irrational, spiteful, and petty woman, complaining about each and everything that Marty does, even when they are definitively positive things about him. But I think it is important to remember just the kind of situation that Kathy is in. These emotions didn't just spring up overnight. She's been in this relationship with Marty for 14 years, and that is a long time. And we know that it was not always this way. Kathy specifically points out the very things that she now complains about were the things she used to love about him. But these emotions have just festered within her for far too long, and they've become twisted as a result. She wants nothing to do with him, to the point where she revels in that single hour she has every morning where he's not around. And I'm not trying to excuse her actions or anything. What she does is not healthy. Instead of dealing with this problem in a mature way, she opts for the easy way out. In both futures, actually. In one, hiring Mr. Sticks to kill her husband, and in the other, where she doesn't kill Marty, she kills herself. And I know it's easy for us to sit here and judge this character, because I'm sure a lot of us haven't been in a situation like this before, but I am sure of one thing, however, that all of us can relate to wanting an easy way out. Maybe not so drastic as murder or suicide, but I think it's something all of us have struggled with at least one point in the past. Maybe it was suicide, or maybe it was something as trivial as cheating on a test instead of studying. Kathy, for as unlikable as she is ultimately at her core a relatable character in my opinion. She is deeply, deeply flawed, but so are all of us. And I think looking at her through that lens of relatability gives her a much stronger character. And of course, Kathy does receive karma by being granted a much more painful death at the hands of none other than Marty, her own husband, who I've mentioned a few times now, is discovered at the end of the story to reciprocate her feelings of resentment, possibly even to a greater degree. Now, what we know of Marty comes from the eyes of Kathy, so it is ultimately a biased view of the character. From Kathy's viewpoint, we know she views him as dull and boring and predictable, that he repeats the same jokes every day, had the same haircut since high school, follows the same routine. The only glimpse we get at Marty's character without any bias, without any filtering through an unreliable narrator, comes at the very end, when we discover that Marty himself also hired Mr. Sticks to kill his wife. And although it's never explicitly said, I think it is fair to assume that he feels the same way towards Kathy that she feels towards him. And due to the fact that he chose a 5 on the pain scale, probably a lot worse towards her than she does to him. From this, we can also learn that Marty, just like Kathy, would rather take the easy way out than face the music and go down the hard road. There's not a whole lot we can say about him just because we ultimately don't know a whole lot, just that he would rather hire a mysterious, demonic stranger to do his bidding, like none other than Mr. Sticks. Mr. Sticks is our monster for this story. I actually think it's quite funny that we managed to go this far into the review without properly discussing him, but let's make up for that here. Although we don't get a deep look at Mr. Sticks as a character, he makes a very strong impression upon arrival, mainly through the way he speaks and acts. Mr. Sticks is given a very charismatic and likable persona. He oozes charm, like an anglerfish luring in its prey. There's not much we can say about him on a deeper level other than what he tells us. Apparently he works for the devil, doing these deeds in his honor, collecting souls is sort of like a cosmic game to him. Interesting world building, but kind of out of place in the story. Mr. Sticks is a very memorable character, someone I wouldn't have been opposed to seeing more of. He's just as interesting as any other mainstay creepypasta character, and with excellent writing to boot. But in terms of a deeper meaning for Mr. Sticks, it's possible that he's meant to represent the character's darker thoughts. As I mentioned earlier, that he's supposed to be that devil on the shoulder, so to say. That dark little voice deep down in us all asking, what if? Mr. Sticks has two distinctly different appearances in this story. His presentable form that he uses to first broach the topic of the proposition to Kathy, and then his more demonic skeleton form that we see at the end when he arrives to kill her. I believe that there are two meanings to this double persona. The first is quite obvious. In a lot of stories where the devil appears, he shows himself first in a sort of disguised form like a snake or a businessman. Something more presentable to make himself more trusted. To make people feel comfortable around him. And then, once the deal is complete and there's no backing out, he reveals his true form in all its horrifying glory. And while I feel like the former is likely what the author is going for, I'd like to speculate on a possible deeper meaning for this transformation, tying it back into the idea that Mr. Sticks acts as a representation of the character's dark thought. Much like the idea of a devil on the shoulder or an intrusive thought, it may first appear like something desirable, something that means well, something inviting and comforting. For Kathy, Mr. Sticks represents the comfort of escapism, the idea that she could just kill her husband and be done with it all. An idea that seems nice to her at first, in the same way that Mr. Sticks appears as a nice businessman, though in the same way someone might see cracks in such a dark idea, there are still cracks in Mr. Sticks' facade. His sharp teeth and creepy eyes, for example. If we follow this train of thought, Mr. Sticks' more demonic appearance could represent the true nature of such an idea coming to light. Much like a devil shedding its disguise, the once desirable idea shows itself for what it truly is. An evil, dark, and depraved idea, something that should be shunned and not embraced. But by that point, it's too late. The idea's already been acted upon, and even in the light of this realization, there's nothing more you can do. Of course, that is all just hypothetical. Whether you view Mr. Sticks as a shallow but cool monster, or a deeper, more symbolic one, he's still a very fun character and an interesting antagonist. If you can even call him that, he's really more like a force of nature, honestly. But overall, the three characters in this story are all together very well written and well put together. They're all very interesting as well to boot. Even Marty, who receives very little screen time, still has some very deep aspects to him that are ripe for exploration. I would have absolutely loved a version of the story from Marty's point of view. And Kathy is an excellent main character. Relatable even despite how hateable she is, and of course, I already mentioned that Mr. Sticks is an excellent monster for this story. Overall, I'd say it's not unfair to give this story a 5 out of 5 in the characters category. The writing of this story is excellent, simply put. I think probably my favorite part about the writing of this story is just how natural all the characters feel. Yes, their motivations are believable and realistic, but the way the story itself is written also just comes across as really natural. Characters react exactly how you'd expect them to. The scenes flow beautifully from one to the next, and I particularly enjoy the writing during Mr. Styx's scenes. The care and attention put into the way he moves and the way he acts is quite satisfying and honestly points towards the author's desire to turn Mr. Styx into something more than just a one-off character. Aside from the structure of the story, the character writing itself is splendid in general. You probably could have assumed that based on the things I said in the character section of the story, but their writing really is wonderful. The way Crowley establishes Kathy's resentment and shows how it builds and festers with each paragraph is a great way to show us how she feels. Not just tell us, but show us. It almost functions as a sort of microcosm of their entire relationship. With each paragraph, her hatred grows, just like how each day her hatred grew as well. I give the writing a 5 out of 5. Although I very much enjoy this story, I personally have to say that it doesn't creep me out any. Now, as always, this section is entirely subjective and just based on personally what I find scary, but even though I think the story is masterfully written with an amazing plot and great characters, I can't say there was any moment of it that really creeped me out. The idea that someone could make a deal with Mr. Styx and dictate how painful your death could be is a good and creepy idea, just not one that really does it for me. In terms of creep factor, I think my rating has to be a 2 out of 5. I can't deny the twist did give me some chills, but overall I was just far more interested and intrigued by Mr. Styx than I was scared of him. For our total tallies, that leaves us with story, 4 out of 5, characters, 5 out of 5, writing, 5 out of 5, creep factor, 2 out of 5. Leaving us with a total score of 16 out of 25. A good score for an even better story. 2 perfect scores and a nearly perfect score. Not bad. Overall, The Proposition is an incredible creepypasta. Amazing writing that is, frankly, far too hard to find in this community. Great characters, and a really solid twist at the end to really tie everything together. And it doesn't go on too long, though, like I said earlier, I wished it could have gone on a little longer. Not particularly a scary one, but an interesting tale nonetheless. A failing marriage, a conundrum so old, a diabolical solution, the proposition foretold. Our second review now comes to an end, but more shall come, my fellow creepy friend. Goodbye and good night, until we meet. Into the darkness I shall now retreat.